moving to the next topic. Our next topic is case studies of diabetes management in frail and elderly patients. I would like to call upon Dr. Vinod Abhichandani for the session.
So, honorable chairpersons, chair lady, and all esteemed colleagues, over next 17 to 18 minutes, I am going to go through this subject allotted to me, case studies of diabetes management in frail elderly population. While the National Elderly Policy defines persons of 60 plus age group as elderly, we must remember that frailty is a medical condition and not an inevitable result of aging. So every aged person doesn't become frail. And the world population is projected to exceed 7.5 billion in this year, 2020, with 1 billion to reach or cross 65 years of age. And as is the case with frailty, more than 25% of the people aged equal to or more than 65 years have diabetes. And in fact, interestingly, 10% of diabetes cases are diagnosed after the age of 65. So frailty is associated with decreased quality of life, a risk of falls, new or increased disability, hospitalization, and increased mortality. And for this reason, it is very important to rule out frailty in all diabetics aged more than 65 where you suspect frailty to be present. Now I will start with some case studies. Most of these case studies are based out of my own practice. This is my first case, Mr. HVB, male 79. He has come in clinic for the first time recently for a medication review. He had been a type 2 diabetic for more than 15 years. He was recently diagnosed with vascular dementia. He was assessed following a minor motor vehicle accident using MOCA scores. MOCA is Montreal Cognitive Assessment Score. And these are some of his comorbidities. He had been hypertensive, long-standing hypertensive, underwent a CABG 12 years ago. He suffers from stable chronic heart failure, and he has DKD with a eGFR of 47. Apart from this, he has benign prostatic hypertrophy and chronic back pain. So this is his current prescription. Ramipril 5 milligram once a day, amlodipine 5 milligram again once a day, 75 milligram of aspirin, 20 milligram of furosemide all once a day, 500 milligram metformin twice per day with that eGFR of 47, 1 milligram glimepiride twice per day, 10 milligram atorvastatin, and paracetamol tablet as required. So our patient HVB lives with his elderly wife in a rented home, but is able to perform all basic activities of daily living. Though his appetite is adequate, his wife notes that in the past 6 months, he forgets to eat regularly unless he is prompted, unless he is reminded. And reviewing his glucose control, we find acceptable HbA1cs, which were done twice in the previous 8 months, clocking 7.2 and 7.4. So trying to bring some evidence to our clinical practice. Our patient would easily meet the criteria for frail elderly. So frail describes patients who have an accumulation of multiple chronic illnesses with associated vulnerabilities such as dementia, functional decline, and geriatric syndrome, which includes falls, impaired mobility, and polypharmacy. So when aging and diabetes combine, they can really compromise the nutritional status of such patients. They can decrease the physical activity capacity, increase the oxidative oxidative stress, increase the inflammatory chemokines circulating in the body. And these are interleukin 6, interleukin 1, and tissue necrotizing factor alpha. And the comorbidities can further complicate the picture. Comorbidities like atherosclerosis, depression, cognitive impairment, and some metabolic impairment characterized by insulin resistance associated with lowered growth hormone, lowered IGF-1, low testosterone, low vitamin D, all these giving rise to sarcopenia, frailty, and frailty in turn can compromise the quality of life of these patients. Frailty can lead to functional dependence and even excess morbidity and death. And it's interesting to note that once frailty sets in, the progressive nature of type 2 diabetes becomes regressive, thereby meaning that such patients become more vulnerable to repeated episodes of hypoglycemia. And there is a frailty assessment pathway available. So the assessment procedures include a thorough clinical review, Fright score, Frail score, SPPB, that is the short physical performance battery, grip strength, 4-meter gait speed, DEXA scan, monofilament or vibration perception, and ankle brachial pressure index. So I have just elaborated an acronym Frail scale that F is fatigue, R is resistance, the ability to climb one flight of stairs, A ambulation, ability to walk one block, I is the illness. So the patient, if has more than 5 illnesses, he is going to be considered as frail. And if there is L, the last L stands for loss of weight, greater than 5% weight loss in the previous year. So what are the key principles of handling such patients? We should offer an individualized plan, which should include nutritional measures, physical activity, and education on self-care and diabetes. Drugs should not be prescribed without a clear-cut indication. And antihyperglycemics that may cause excessive weight loss and or are associated with a high risk of hypoglycemia should at any cost be avoided. So what was the change I made in his prescription? If you look to the left side of the slide, all the same. I reduced his metformin from 500 milligram BID to 500 milligram extended release once a day, offered him 5 milligram linagliptin after breakfast, and removed his glimepiride from the prescription. His statin and paracetamol SOS usage were continued. Now I come to my second patient. She's a 67-year-old postmenopausal woman, type 2 diabetic since 4 years, on maximum tolerated dose of metformin, around 2 grams, but still remained uncontrolled with that metformin monotherapy, and she needs an additional oral antidiabetic agent. Oh, sorry, I need to go back. Her only comorbidity is osteoporosis. She in fact had a recent history of fragility fracture for which the orthopedic surgeon had recommended calcium, vitamin D, and bisphosphonates for prevention of further fractures. She remains a lean, frail-looking woman, stays alone in a flat, however, she manages her other activities by herself. So we are having an elderly female who stays alone with severe osteoporosis with a history of fragility fracture. Now, if we want to add a medicine to her prescription, I think this drug should be absolutely free of hypoglycemia effect, should be bone-friendly and weight neutral. And if we look at the armamentarium, we have, besides metformin, pioglitazone, SGLT2 inhibitors, and DPP4 inhibitors. So we are going to pick up the best for this lady. Would TZ days qualify for her? Probably not, because they tend to precipitate osteoporosis, cause peripheral edema, reducing mobility, and sulfonylureas and glinides, we are all aware, they can cause nasty hypoglycemia with devastating consequences. AGIs may compromise the digestion process. If we look further, we have SGLT2 inhibitors, And Dr. Ponda just, I think, alluded to this, that frail people are best kept away from SGLT2 inhibitors because this class of agents pose polyuria and candidiasis risk, may aggravate osteoporosis, and the weight loss that occurs with the usage of these agents may, in fact, exacerbate frailty and sarcopenia. So the best option that remains for this lady, I believe, it happens to be a DPP4 inhibitor. And what are the targets currently recommended for elderly patients, elderly frail? So if you look to the right of that, this particular cartoon, you have ADA 2019 and American Geriatrics Association 2013 guidelines telling us to keep the patients anywhere from 7.5 to 9% in terms of HbA1c, depending on their degree of frailty and comorbidities. This is my third case, a male 76-year-old. He has been living with wife in his own home. He's a type 2 diabetic on metformin 500 milligram BID and gliclazide 60 milligram modified release once a day. Despite this protocol, his HbA1c is 8.2, but there are concerns about his ability to cope at home because he falls frequently and gets increasingly confused. So one fine day, he's admitted in the hospital in a very confused condition. And at that point of time, his blood sugar was 50 milligram on admission. So why aging increases the risk of hypoglycemia? There are several explanations for this. There is reduced hormonal counter-regulation. Renal and hepatic changes can predispose to hypoglycemia, allowing the drugs to persist longer in the circulation. Inadequate or irregular nutrition and a dehydrated status can predispose. Decreased intestinal absorption can be an issue in some of the old elderly frail people. Autonomic neuropathy, polypharmacy, and use of alcohol and other sedating medicines can be other contributing factors. So we should be looking out, screening these patients for possibility of falls as well as frailty in clinical settings. So you have very nice, elegant guidelines sort of flow charts available, where on the left side you are looking at diabetes-related frailty risk factors. Some of these are IR, muscle weakness, sarcopenia. On the right side you have diabetes-related falls risk factor, the risk factors which will predispose these patients to fall repeatedly. And they include sensorimotor impairments, retinopathy, hypoglycemia, polypharmacy, and so forth. But each one will augment the other. So it's a vicious cycle a patient enters into, and we have to interrupt at some stage. Coming back to my patient, he was treated for hypoglycemia, but the same medications were continued. He got admitted with 50 milligram blood sugar. He was aggressively treated to correct that, but the medications were not changed. So what happened over next 3 to 4 days? His fasting blood sugars remained between 36 to 72, and then a fine senior registrar suggested that we should take gliclazide off his prescription, and all of us did that. His fasting sugar rose to 100, anywhere from 100 to 140 milligram, and in subsequent days his mobility improved and confusion was resolved, and a diagnosis of recurrent hypoglycemia was made. So what we learned from this case is that SUs can cause unexplained confusion and frailty, which may be corrected by stopping the drug, and there are potential interventions available to prevent falls and frailty in elderly people. Exercise is still a very good option. Exercise to improve balance, strength, and mobility. Some of the cartoons are self-explanatory. And very, very important is diabetes self-management education. This is the last of the case I am going to present, Mr. MKZ, male, 81-year-old. He was admitted with bilateral pulmonary embolism on glipizide, 5 milligram BID at the time of admission, a short-acting sulfonylurea. He was using perhaps since several years, and he had a prolonged and complicated hospital course. and he required endocrine consult for difficult to control blood glucose. He was discharged to home on the same sliding scale, insulin scale needed to control his blood sugars during the acute illness. And for this reason, he came back to the clinic with wide excursions of glucose. So what is the impact of wide excursion of glucose in the frail elderly diabetic? Whether the patient spikes or goes down, in either case, there is a worsening of neuropathic pain and a further decrease of functional disability, increase of functional disability, the ability to work properly will be compromised, malnutrition, cognitive impairment, depression, all those factors will get worsened. Ultimately, what you see is a compromised self-care ability of that patient. Already, struggling to control his diabetes on his own, and this gets further compromised, and the diabetes worsens for that patient. So when we look at the therapeutic armamentarium, we have few options to exercise. What about metformin? So the risk for older people is that impaired renal function can increase the risk of lactic acidosis. So reduce the dose if eGFR is less than 50. For this reason, I reduced the dose in one of the cases I presented because his eGFR was 47, reduced to just 500 milligram XR once a day. DPU4 inhibitors are relatively safe. Linagliptin does not require any dose modification, except for that most of the standard DPU4 inhibitors do require a 1 or 2 step dose reduction. SGLT2 inhibitors cause postural hypertension and dehydration, and they are a big no-no for at least patients above 75. Pioglitazone can predispose to the risk of aggravation of heart failure by retaining fluid and maybe increasing the fracture risk. SUs and glenides are nasty for the hypoglycemia they cause. And GLP-1 agonists, though there are currently data to use them for up to eGFR of 30, but certainly in this particular age group and the elderly frail group especially, avoid if eGFRs are less than 50, just straight away. That's what I do, at least in my practice. And AGIs, again, may be avoided if eGFRs are less than 50 because they can cause flatulence, bloating, diarrhea, and further lead to malnutrition. So what about insulin therapy in the frail elderly? The requirement is that patients or their relatives, caregivers have to have good visual and motor skills and the cognitive ability to calculate dose, to dial the dose if they are using pens, or to withdraw from the vial. And what are preferred are once daily basal analog insulin injection therapy because of their tendency to cause minimum hypoglycemia, and the products like Degludec are truly causing no nocturnal hypoglycemia, very, very safe. So my concluding slides, ladies and gentlemen, an HbA1c level of less than or equal to 8% is suggested as a usual target for elderly diabetics with mild to moderate frailty. And please remember, there are no proven short-term benefits of achieving glycemic control below an HbA1c of 7.5. And my final slide, a careful consideration of primum non nocere, that is, do no harm, is really required. And please try to de-prescribe drugs in our diabetic patients who in this age group that I described, elderly, frail, who come with a HbA1c of less than 7.5, and it really makes sense to incorporate frailty assessment scheme in our day-to-day routine practice. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.
Thank you, sir, for the nice case studies presentation. From audience, any questions?
Questions, criticisms, everything welcome. So please go ahead. Or even your invaluable experience.
Sir, for those wonderful case presentations. And in elderly frail patients, along with the de-escalation of the OHs, and if we give more emphasis on the nutrition, that means food taken by them, especially at night, if we can incorporate some high fiber carbohydrate along with protein, that may be vegetarian protein or that may be non-vegetarian protein, that will reduce the incidence of hypoglycemia much more in the early hours. And the same way, if we can introduce every time little bit amount of protein along with the breakfast, lunch and dinner, that will also lower down the hypoglycemia. And the sarcopenia also, and above the age of 65, if patient is not renally impaired, we should increase the amount of protein also in that time.
I cannot agree more than this. I mean, thoroughly agree with whatever your brilliant suggestions were there. But I just, in a summary line, mentioned that we should offer these patients a proper nutritional assessment. And I think we have to rope in a good dietitian, which usually is a member of our team. And they do a good job for most of us. So, as you rightly said, sarcopenia needs reversal with the help of judicious use of proteins, maybe proteins of certain varieties, vegetarian source, non-vegetarian source. We have to also look at the cultural preferences of the patient involved. And I think it's a challenge, but with very proper evidence-based approach, we can surmount that challenge. Thank you very much for your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. We conclude the session. Okay, one last question.
Thank you very much.
One last question.
Older people, the short-acting sulfonylurea, that's repaglinide is useful.
Yes, repaglinide is useful, but we have to be pharmacovigilant even while using repaglinide, because with, though it is recommended in DKD, the chances of experiencing hypoglycemia are higher than maybe, for example, linagliptin. So that's why my personal choice has been always a real long-acting analog insulin like degludec. So I have had very good, rewarding experience with that, in combination, if at all required, with linagliptin. So thank you very much again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all the speakers. We conclude the session now and we'll move on to the new session.